The afternoon heat pressed down on the coastal village as a small boy's wooden elephant tumbled from his grip, rolling toward the shade of a flowering tree. His bare feet slapped against the packed earth. There, beneath drooping branches, heavy with pale blooms, a mangy dog gnawed at something green, a fallen fruit, its skin split to reveal white flesh. The animal's jaw worked frantically, crushing the seed within. Milky sap leaked from the fruit's broken stem, mixing with the dog's saliva. The boy reached for his toy, then froze. The dog's legs buckled. Pink foam bubbled between yellowed teeth as its body convulsed, ribs heaving against patchy fur. The creature's eyes rolled white. The child stumbled backward, his toy forgotten in the dirt. The dog's muscles seized in violent spasms, its spine arching impossibly. Within moments the thrashing stopped. Only the drone of insects remained. The boy stared at the motionless form, then at the tree above, its branches swaying gently, more pale fruits dangling like lanterns. The village shaman found the dog's corpse at dawn, foam still crusted around its blackened lips. He dragged the stiff carcass to his bamboo hut, muttering prayers, convinced the gods had sent a sign through the beast's suffering. Within hours, he'd extracted 3 green fruits from the same tree, their milky sap dripping onto his woven mat. By noon, the shaman had dried the kernels over smouldering charcoal, grinding them between 2 stones until a fine powder dusted his palms. A crowd gathered as he mixed the powder into coconut milk, the bitter smell making children wrinkle their noses. The accused thief, a young fisherman who'd denied stealing nets, was forced to kneel before the clay bowl. The fisherman's throat burned as the paste slid down. His pupils dilated. Within minutes, his chest began to heave, each breath shallower than the last. The shaman proclaimed divine justice as the man's fingers clawed at his neck, his body convulsing on the packed earth. The crowd stepped back, watching him die in silent terror. The shaman's clay bowl still glistened with bitter residue when the merchant slipped from the crowd, his silk robes brushing past stunned villagers. 3 days passed before he invited his rival, a competing spice trader, for evening refreshments, producing 2 copper cups of fermented palm wine beneath the thatched awning of his shop. His fingers, steady from years of measuring precious saffron, pinched the coarse powder into the second cup. The rival drained it between boasts of new trade routes, wiping foam from his beard. Within minutes, his breathing shortened. The merchant watched, counting silently as the man clutched his throat and stumbled toward his sleeping quarters. On the woven mat, the rival's body twisted like a salted eel. His chest heaved once, twice, then seized completely. Through the window slats, the sun's last amber rays caught the merchant's face, illuminating neither triumph nor remorse, only the calculating eyes of a man who had discovered the perfect weapon. The merchant's rival now lay cold beneath 6 feet of earth, yet his death birthed something far more sinister than a single murder. In the cramped tea-houses where traders gathered to haggle over spices and silk, men leaned close, their breath reeking of betel nut, whispering of the poison that left no trace. A fisherman's widow discovered it first, the value of death itself. Behind the rotting nets of her husband's abandoned stall, she ground dried Cerbera kernels between worn stones, each twist of her wrist producing a fine pale powder worth more than a month's catch. Silver coins clinked against clay jars in the darkness. The transactions occurred at dawn, when honest folk still slept. Buyers arrived with faces wrapped in rough cloth, pressing damp coins into sellers' palms before vanishing into morning mist. Each oil-stained packet, no larger than a child's fist, contained enough poison to silence 3 men, or 1 stubborn mother-in-law. Word of the merchant's untraceable vengeance rippled through Kerala's coastal villages like monsoon rain through palm fronds. In a whitewashed house overlooking the paddy fields, Mira ground Cerbera kernels between smooth river stones, her gold bangles clinking against the mortar. The powder fell like ash into her cupped palm, barely enough to dust a butterfly's wing. Her brother, Rajan, arrived after sunset, his bullock cart creaking to a halt outside. The land dispute had festered for 3 monsoons since their father's death. She stirred the pale powder into jasmine tea, watching it dissolve without trace. The porcelain cup trembled slightly as she carried it to the veranda where Rajan waited, fanning himself against the humid night. "Strange warmth," he muttered, pressing his palm to his stomach. His breathing quickened. The teacup slipped from his fingers, spinning across the stone floor in widening circles. Mira watched from the doorway as his body convulsed once, twice, then stilled. Outside, jackals howled in the darkness. The land deed lay unsigned on the table between them. The widow's brother never reached the magistrate's office with his land deed. District Magistrate Henry Whitmore found the body slumped against a banyan tree, eyes glazed, foam dried at the corners of his mouth. Another unexplained death in a growing stack of reports that cluttered his mahogany desk in the Kerala Administrative Headquarters. Whitmore's fingers traced the entries. Fishermen discovered rigid in their boats. Merchants collapsed in their counting houses. Wives found cold beside untouched morning meals. No knife wounds, no rope marks. Local physicians pressed stethoscopes to silent chests and shook their heads, muttering about mysterious fevers that struck without warning. The magistrate's pen scratched across parchment, recording identical symptoms: dilated pupils, blue-tinged lips, hearts that simply ceased. His Bengali assistant whispered of a village curse, but Whitmore studied the patterns spreading across his jurisdiction map. Deaths clustered near coastal settlements where peculiar trees bore green fruit. The killer remained invisible, methodical, perfect. The widow's brother never rose from that moonless encounter, his death certificate bearing the magistrate's familiar scrawl, "Cause unknown." But in the coastal villages of Kerala, where palm-thatched huts clustered beneath the spreading branches of Cerbera trees, death certificates accumulated like monsoon leaves. The moneylenders' ledgers grew thick with unpaid debts, their red ink entries multiplying faster than the rice harvest could ever hope to settle. A fisherman's wife crushed the pale kernel between grinding stones at dawn, her husband's empty nets hanging like shrouds in the courtyard. The powder mixed easily with coconut milk, tasteless, odorless, merciful. She drank while her infant daughter slept, leaving only a tiny woven slipper beside the mortar, its delicate beadwork catching the first rays of sunlight through the window slats. The village headman found 3 more bodies that week. A tenant farmer who owed 2 seasons' worth of grain, a young bride whose dowry remained unpaid, an untouchable who'd accidentally touched the temple priest's shadow. Each corpse bore the same glassy stare, the same bluish tinge around the lips. The Cerbera pods littered the ground like spent ammunition, their broken husks testament to a silent war against despair. The district magistrate's quill scratched across parchment, ink blotting where his hand trembled. 17 deaths in 3 months. His superiors in Calcutta demanded action. By dawn, riders galloped toward every coastal village carrying sealed orders. Any household harboring Cerbera seeds would face the lash. The trees themselves were condemned. Red-coated sepoys assembled at daybreak, axes glinting. They marched in columns toward the groves where Cerbera trees clustered near village wells. The first blow, split bark. White sap wept from the wound, spattering the soldiers' boots. Villagers watched from doorways as their ancient shade trees crashed down, leaves shuddering. An old woman rushed forward, clutching the sergeant's sleeve. These trees shielded her grandfather's grave, her children's naming ceremonies. The soldier shoved her aside. By noon, stumps dotted the landscape like broken teeth. Milky poison soaked into red earth. The magistrate's report would claim 90 trees destroyed. The deaths continued. The British soldiers' axes had barely stopped swinging when the first palm-wrapped packets began circulating through Kerala's shadowed alleys. In a cramped hut near the Malabar coast, an elderly healer named Krishnan ground Cerbera kernels between stone mortars, the rhythmic crushing masked by monsoon rain drumming on his thatched roof. His apprentice watched nervously as Krishnan spread the pale powder across banana leaves, measuring each portion with a horn spoon worn smooth by his grandfather's fingers. The boy's nostrils flared at the powder's faint sweetness, like overripe jackfruit mixed with bitter almonds. Each packet, folded with precise creases, disappeared into the folds of visiting women's saris. By dawn, Krishnan's calloused fingertips bore telltale yellow stains that no amount of coconut oil could scrub away. When the district magistrate's men pounded on doors searching for contraband, they found only empty mortars and the lingering scent of incense burning to mask something far more sinister beneath. The axes fell silent, but the dying continued. In a cramped Madras archive, moth-eaten ledgers chronicle deaths that puzzled British physicians for decades. District Officer William Hartley's 1889 journal mentions 17 unexplained fatalities in a single coastal village, all presenting identical symptoms: dilated pupils, erratic heartbeat, respiratory collapse within hours of falling ill. A Tamil elder's palm leaf manuscript discovered behind rotting court documents catalogued the victims differently. Beside each name, cryptic notations: dawn meal, evening rice, festival sweet. The elder had tracked something the colonials missed. Every death followed consumption of food or drink. His final entry, dated monsoon season 1891, simply reads, "The tree remembers what men forget." Modern forensic chemists would later identify Cerberin in exhumed tissue samples from colonial-era graves, but in those suffocating tropical nights, grieving families buried their dead without answers, while the Cerbera trees bloomed white in moonlight, their fruit ripening unseen. The poison that claimed hundreds left no trace except silence, and ledgers gathering dust in forgotten corners.